a very bad throat. I'll try to make myself. Am I audible? Thank you. I thank JUSC for taking this initiative, important program I consider. But the event that triggered this program is not a necessarily organic reason to talk about the legacy of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. I think you might expect a little bit of brutal criticism of certain things, and I might say certain disturbing things, and I take the full responsibility of what I'm going to say. All right. See, Comrade Govind Pansare's book, Shivaji Kaun Hota? Who was Shivaji? Right in the beginning, he acknowledges that in order to make any idea of democracy successful in India, you have to engage the regressive forces on cultural front. All right, you cannot remain disembodied, abstract, or borrow progressive legacy from elsewhere. See, the progressive legacy of progressive ideologies which are from abroad, they are not necessarily problematic in their own organic context. But what about India? So, actually, before, because I'm not here to give you answers, rather I'm here to raise some questions, and they will be based on concrete facts that you can go and check and cross-check. All right. But before I get into that debate, I'll just kind of tell you two experiences that I had in the north. Because here, like many of you must be confounded, confused. Why are we talking about the medieval king? Are we nostalgic about medieval king? That's a very genuine question. But then, is it really predicated on sound history or sound historiography? That one has to ask this question. When you say that without getting into, because see, ignorance is not a problem. But considering one's ignorance as false ground on which we look at a particular icon or particular signifier, it's a problem. And ignorance in non-political sphere as such, academic, relatively less political, but political sphere, it's not pardonable. So the event that happened, I was in Maharashtra at that time, and people started calling me and sending messages, what is happening in Delhi? All right. So I knew what's happening, and I know more or less who was trapped and how it was trapped and all that. So I don't want to get into that debate. But I'm just giving two experiences from my academic journey. In 2002-03, I was teaching French in Lucknow. How many of you are from Lucknow? Anybody? There is a Parivartan Chowk in Lucknow. There is a Parivartan Chowk. It's a very important chowk. And when I went there, there were a set of statues there. Because the very word Parivartan means something, no? And I was sitting and having chicken tandoori with my friend, and there was a statue of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, statue of Phule, Mahatma Jyotirao Phule, statue of Savitribai Phule, and there was a statue of Chhatrapati Shahu Maharaj. All right. Then I asked the gentleman who was sitting next to me, he was from Bihar. I said, do you know who is this person? He said, हाँ लिखा है नीचे Chhatrapati Shahu Maharaj. मैंने कहा कौन है? होगा कोई दलित. क्योंकि it was the initiative by BSP. See how we react to certain things. All right. Then there was no point. And the situation here is not that enlightened. We tend to get into that illusion that we are more enlightened than people in Lucknow. Not necessarily. In 2016-17, actually we organized the program to celebrate the legacy of Shivaji, Chhatrapati Shivaji. First in my place, then second it was here, some 20-30 students were there, organized by UBSF. So that's how we started. And then I have a photo of Chhatrapati Shivaji in my house. Then during this PA campaign, a senior professor came to my place, and many of them, and she looked at the image of Chhatrapati Shivaji, and the first thing she said, oh, that's the icon of that toxic, masculine, Hindutva-wadi, regional jingoism. Meant you are doomed. When you people are doomed. Because the images with which she was speaking, that is the communal historiography commissioned by Sangh Parivar. Alright, and this gentlewoman, professor, she thinks that she's enlightened because she's a Jain professor. I can name them if you want, but I don't want to name here. I confront them day to day in my day-to-day life. So I said, you people are doomed. These two experiences tell you what it is. But in the beginning of this book, Comrade Govind Pansare, when he says that we have to take on the right on cultural front, what it means, ideological and cultural front, what it means. It means that then, he goes for the synthesis of what he calls Phule, Ambedkar or Bahujan historiography with Marxist interpretation. That's what he does. And he's not the first person to do it. Before him, there was Comrade Chhatrapati who already did this. And because these people were working on the वो जमीन पे काम करें इसलिए उनको ये पता है करना पड़ेगा ये जो हम आसमान में इधर जेनी में हमें जरूरत नहीं पड़ती इसकी. So now the question is that I'm going to link it with some philosophies about our associated life. It's not just about kind of Shivaji, and then it's of course, as my friend Harish told you, that it's extremely emotive matter in Maharashtra. The name of Chhatrapati Shivaji is extremely emotive and sensitive, but at the same time you must acknowledge and understand that it is not limited to particular caste, particular region. It is cutting across the caste system. There must be some reason. Alright. And it is so coexistential with the very identity of Maharashtra. That is one thing. So it cannot become an object of that that dry academic discussion also. Because it is actually that so-called dry approach has some other philosophy that pins it down. Okay, things are political. So when Comrade Govind Pansare wanted to synthesize, he went back to Phule's writing about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. So now you have to keep in mind two things. One is history and the other one is historiography. Like history, you have historical sources, Portuguese, English, Mughal, you can access them. And then you have historiography, that people selecting certain things from them have written different accounts about Chhatrapati Shivaji. Alright, and then if, let's say for example, Mahatma Phule wrote that Povada, it's a ballad on Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, the Raitecha Raja, the people's king. The idea of people, as Harish developed in his session, what is it? Because if these are feudal times, there is no notion of people. Feudal means there are feudal lords. There is that pre-democratic or anti-democratic social order, economic order. But then this idea of people, is it really there? Do we have examples, instances, archival proof to say that he was people's king? One can cross-check that, isn't it? And then second thing that, see that how communal historiography appropriated the very signifier of Chhatrapati Shivaji. The communal historiography, you know what it is. In the context of Mahar Satyagraha, when Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar launched this massive movement, Mahar Satyagraha, in that very year he visited two places, Bhima Koregaon and Raigad Fort. These are two places. Why did he visit these two places? You should understand that, because in order to understand why Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar visited in that context of Mahar Satyagraha, in which he burnt Manusmriti, we have to understand then there must be some literature, something about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, which was what we call there the Prabodhan Charwal. Is kind of the literature which radically questions the social order predicated on Manusmriti, and that is Mahatma Phule. And one example of this selective historiography, that Dhananjay Tir is one of the first persons to write a biography on Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. You will see the mention of Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar visiting Raigad Fort, but you will not see the mention of he visiting Bhima Koregaon. See how politics is at work there, and you know that he was writing on behalf of whom, everybody knows that. Alright, this is one thing. And when, for example, for Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, it was very important to use certain signifiers from the Indian history to galvanize, because he had to work on the ground. Because see, disembodied ideas make sense to us maybe because we are in that academic sphere where there are not many those we try to say that try to suspend the material bodies. But when you are kind of engaging with the political, which is very contradictory and heterogeneous, you have to embody your ideas. And in order to embody your ideas, I think you might understand that there are huge limits if you embody the idea of justice with Stalin and Lenin in the context where people don't know who are these people. You understand the problem of what it means to be organic? So Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar used, because there was reason and ground to use. You understand? That and this was then later on Dhananjay Keer doesn't mention Bhima Koregaon but mentions Raigad Fort visit. And then when Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar went all the way walking to Raigad Fort, there was again, ये पहली बार नहीं बार-बार होता है ये. Some mischievous people wrote in the newspaper that Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar went there to desecrate Chhatrapati Shivaji's throne and considered himself bigger than Shivaji. अपमान करने के लिए गए थे. ये पहली बार नहीं होता है. तो इससे लड़वाना ये बहुत पुरानी स्ट्रैटेजी है. And this is you will find in Khair Mode's volumes on Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar. All right. This was in the newspaper. So this slander campaign was launched against Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, saying that he went to Raigad Fort to desecrate, insult the legacy of Chhatrapati Shivaji. So ये होता है, politics में होता रहेगा. Now these two things, Bhima Koregaon and Raigad Fort, in our popular imagination or in our spontaneous understanding about Maratha history, as if one is the beginning of Maratha history and the other one is the end of Maratha history. How can Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar respect both the beginning and the end of Maratha history? Because Bhima Koregaon battle means by that there was an end to Peshwa rule, isn't it? And for Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar it was very important because Peshwa rule stood for something. And before Peshwa rule, for good 30-40 years, it was Shivrai. So in Marathi we have Peshwai, Shivrai and Peshwai. Alright. So, and one more question that one can ask. That first, any kind of, this kind of glorification or celebration of the figure of Chhatrapati Shivaji happens in the writings of Mahatma Phule. What happened in those intervening 100 years? It was Peshwa rule. Why don't you find actually that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj's Samadhi was in ruins? It was Mahatma Phule who went and actually cleaned and started. So now people who are kind of writing or commissioning massive projects of appropriation, one can ask them this question. वो क्या मैंने कहा यहाँ पे 18 साल में कब इन्होंने शिव जयंती मनाई मुझे बताइए. ये तो बोलते हैं ना कि ये तो हमारा आइकन है, तो 18 साल में क्यों नहीं याद आई कभी? But the left might be indifferent because they have their problems, because they wanted to remain disembodied, disembodied falsely. All right, falsely disembodied. Now they want to embody. I don't know for what reasons. I really think in good faith there are solid good reasons, or it is just kind of that. See, the very one has to problematize the very notion of progressive legacy. Then you see that in India, in Indian history, there is no progressive legacy. Actually, you are subscribing to the very notion of very philosophy of history that the right embodies. One should understand that. As if in India, in Indian history, within quotes, that there were no possibilities of just forms of associated life, then actually we are subscribing to Marxist philosophy of history. Marx borrows it from Hegel, and Hegel says that India is incapable of any idea of reason, freedom, and all that. And that's what the right also thinks. Because the idea of democracy is impossible in India. So what our friends who had this cultural, intellectual capital in their hands, monopoly, absolute monopoly, they thought that since it's not possible, because they didn't scrutinize social history, cultural history, they went abroad and they borrowed. But people like Mahatma Phule and the social constituency they come from, they didn't have this cultural, economic capital to go abroad and get more expertise than our privileged friends. So this battle is not equal. Understand? So these people went abroad and said, "Wait, wahi pe hai." The point of salvation is there. That if you posit one singular point of salvation somewhere in some distant space and time, you institute a point of tyranny also. Because then whoever is closer to that point becomes more legitimate. And whoever is away from that point becomes less legitimate. So people like Phule, Shao, Ambedkarite, that legacy was dismissed with a lot of contempt, ridiculed, and they thought that we can mobilize those icons. What happened? But let us be honest, does it really happen, when people are doing grassroots politics in states where like, Kerala or let's say, people are mobilizing cultural content. यहाँ पे क्यों नहीं होता है तो इसमें? These are the questions. So, now the image that, that traveled to the north through right-wing communal historiography of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj is Go Brahman Pratipalak. Who was Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj? दूसरा कुछ काम नहीं था, खाली काउ प्रोटेक्ट करना था और ब्राह्मणों को प्रोटेक्ट करना था. क्यों? बाकी क्या मतलब एटीएम से आते थे क्या? फ्री में आते थे क्या? Why this ghettoization of something which was people compare Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj with, let's say, Bismarck or Napoleon? These are anachronisms to me. One has to see, because Shivaji means whatever period that he was in power, he undermined feudal lords. He undermined Chaturvarni Vyavastha to a great extent. Relatively speaking, we have to see the history. All right. There was no preferential treatment to Brahmins. I can give you some examples. For example, when many times the emperor of Delhi tried to capture Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and failed. And only one person who succeeded, who was he? Mirza Raje Jai Singh. कौन है? Muslim था. Who was he? He was a mighty nobleman serving the emperor of Delhi. When he goes there, and Chhatrapati Shivaji was sieged for many months, and people who organized what we call Court Chandi Yajna were 400 Brahmins to wish the victory of Mirza Raja Jai Singh. For 3 months, this chanting continued. ऐसे कैसे दो ब्राह्मण परिवार हो सकता है कि वो बोलते हैं कि छत्रपति शिवाजी must be defeated and conquered by the emperor of Delhi औरंगजेब? ये facts cross check करो और देखो, थोड़ा introspection करो. Understand? And when he was taken to Agra, then, so that the remaining history and then people add certain things. One example is that. The other example is that if you see the composition of his administration, then you will realize that actually he has undermined the caste system. And the particular example that Comrade Pansare is developing there is that of Ramoshis. Ramoshis, that tribe, that community which helped Chhatrapati Shivaji to conquer many forts. Because you see, where was his kind of, this state that he crafted from nowhere, carved from nowhere? It was like that meeting point of Adil Shahi and Mughal Empire. That's where he was actually grabbing from both ends, using what we call guerrilla warfare. So he is also kind of, signifier of courage, cleverness, all these things we know in our popular legends, isn't it? But in Maharashtra, he also kind of stands for a signifier of self-respect. When this community, and that very community gets criminalized. under Peshwai. Under Peshwa rule, they were actually, because Peshwa rules means not just a political order that you see in Bajirao Mastani. It's also a social order. When this Peshwai actually catered to Brahminism, and there was preferential privileged treatment to Brahmins, and the masses, peasants, Dalits, all they were kind of repressed, and the accounts that you see under Peshwa in Pune, you must read that. And particularly that poem of Mukta Salve. These are the sources, historical sources one has to read rather than going by the popular narratives circulated, and we call ourselves researchers, and then we have strong judgments. What are we celebrating? And what is it? Many of you know that I don't subscribe to this left-right thing. I'm outside it. Because Indian history cannot be read, measured, because it's coming from the up. Because if you go to villages, I go to villages, I interact with people, they don't understand what is left, right. They don't understand. And if they don't understand, the intellectuals, they should understand the failure. कहाँ से left, right? क्यों समझेंगे वो आपको? What is the constitution of Indian political? What language will they understand? That's why Comrade Pansare understands it that the right has kind of outsmarted, if there is that left is there, kind of many kind of kilometers. You should understand, because see, I said that even today we are in democracies. One more example about his approach to women, Chhatrapati Shivaji's approach to women. It was a clear and explicit orders. The dignity of a woman will not be violated, must be protected, no matter who she is, whether she belongs to the enemy camp. And that was described in the 6 golden pages of Savarkar as disease. This respect of women Savarkar calls vikruti. ये क्रॉस चेक कर लेना आप 6 golden pages of Indian history, and in that, according to Savarkar, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj was a fluke. Somebody who created his state from nowhere is a fluke and spends pages after pages on Peshwai. On Savarkar. See, I'm telling you all these things because I have been through all these historiographies. I'm the product of all these historiographies. And this popular icon that many people say that it's that regionalism, jingoism, all that. It is because the way Shiv Sena appropriated it. Because in my schools or books, the way I read Chhatrapati Shivaji, but in my villages, Shiv Sena had recruited the गुंडा थे ना गाँव के, वो उनके मतलब अभी 40 के 40 उधर भागे ना. I was not surprised. I was not at all surprised. That's what actually the capital of Shiv Sena was, that unthinking, uncouth, uneducated people should be just they have muscle power. But that is an appropriation. See, one has to see there are many things, like this image of Go Brahman Patipalak, and Comrade Sharad Patil and Comrade Pansare, they effected this synthetic cultural program. Alright, recently everybody's taken seriously, but in 60s and 70s it was not considered a serious thing by the left. At that time it had sufficient might, clout. But now they are taking it seriously, and that's a good sign, if I believe. So the point is that when we want to, two things are there. Here I'm trying to make two theoretical arguments. One is what idea of history we have. If we have that Hegelian idea of history that Indian space is incapable of any emancipatory idea, then actually left and right they meet. Because we don't want to scrutinize our own social past. The revolts, the struggles, if Periyar, Birsa and Phule, Ambedkar, these icons, why do they kind of reinvest the signifiers from the Indian social history? There is a reason to it. There is a reason to it. Because they know the folks that they are addressing, folks for whom they are working, they are not going to Moscow and London and Paris to get expertise in that progressive legacy. ये to understand that. So, and I personally subscribe to this idea of progressive ethos that it is intrinsic to human nature, no matter where they are, Africa, India, or Europe, or America. This, that idea of freedom, idea of justice, idea of equality is not a monopoly of Paris, London, or let's say Germany. It is not, Eurocentric thing. So if this idea of freedom, justice, equality are intrinsic to human nature, the consequent argument would be that in every social space there must be some kind of conflict. And that conflict proper to Indian space is this conflict, this libertarian, liberty-side forces are at work every moment, and there are revolutions and counter-revolutions. And with this, I think, see, the moment Comrade Govind Pansare, because this book is very popular in Maharashtra, you must know in lakhs, the book is being sold in lakhs, distributed. And that's when the right got threatened and Comrade Govind Pansare was assassinated in the line of duty. Because otherwise you don't threaten. You just kind of, they make fun of you. You have to threaten. And in order to threaten, one has to be genuinely convinced and one has to have genuine convictions. But genuine convictions will necessarily come at our own price because we are standing on some cultural, intellectual capital for which may not be directly responsible. Right? So one more thing about women. There is a very powerful landlord, a feudal lord called Ranja Patil. He had kidnapped poor peasant's daughter, raped, and she committed suicide. And when this news became quite widespread and Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj understood that one poor girl was raped and then she committed suicide, that Ranja Patil was executed. अब देखो हाथरस में क्या हो रहा है? क्या हो रहा है हाथरस में? ये है छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज का idea of India or idea of Indian society. No matter who was that, he was a powerful feudal lord, and he thought that I think nobody would care for that poor girl. But when this news reached Chhatrapati Shivaji, that is the respect of women. So these are not just kind of, people have not fabricated these things. You can access Portuguese, Mughal, and English sources, popular folk lores, and then different historiographies. So this is a very complex and sensitive and highly emotive topic. And one has to understand that everybody is not crazy in Maharashtra. Some people might use it in a crazy manner, but that's not everything. Alright, I think I have made some points here, and I hope I was intelligible. And see, I came here for JNUSC program, not for a particular party here. Yes, the entirety of student community here. For me, I am not doctrinal here. For me, everybody is my student in the classroom. And I have to maintain that. If I become doctrinal, then there is no difference between them and me. For me, everybody is my student. And for me, because at this age, what I was, I know that. And I give that latitude, that space that people will learn. I will not stigmatize anybody. For example, like what's happening, Preeti Solanki and this, I think there's a justice march at 9 o'clock. I would request all of you to participate and show that some kind of that synthesis is happening at different level, but here there are so many fault lines. Because then I understand politics and all that, but no meeting point, is that antagonism is there? It is just kind of politically driven. One has to introspect and see if there is a broader solidarity possible or not. Thank you very much for listening.